By the beard of Zeus! In this video we're going to talk about filtering in AG Grid in Vanilla.js. This is a basic AG Grid setup. We've got some column definitions, default call-def, flex in default call-def to spread all columns across the width of the grid, and we're loading some row data from the server. Note that when I hover over the column headers, no hamburger is displayed to open the column menu. If you'd like to filter by a particular column, add property filter and set it to true on its column definition. And we can see the hamburger icon on the athlete column. When we click on it, the filter appears in a pop-up. This is the simple text filter. It's the default filter that appears when you're using AG Grid community version. The text filter allows for text filtering. I'm going to set it to return back values that start with Susan or contains Linda, and there is magic in the world. Alrighty, let's return to column defs. The default filter was used because I only specified true for the filter property. For using a specific type of filter, I would provide the filter name here. This would include custom filter components I've built myself. For now, I will reference the default filter by name. It's called AJ Text Column Filter. And you can see it's the same default text filter. There are 5 filter types in total that come with AG Grid. 3 of them come with the community version and 2 of them with the enterprise version. Let's look at the 3 community versions that come with AG Grid Community: Text Column Filter, Number Column Filter, and Date Column Filter. The Athlete Column Filter is still the text filter. On the Age Column Filter, I've got a filter that looks similar, but this is the number filter. You can see that the values in the drop-down are different, specific to numbers. So let's do equals 23 or equals 18, or how about less than 18? And you can see 17, 16, 15 in the age column. And then lastly, the date column has been provided with the date filter, where I can provide any date I want. And the filter doesn't work, because the values in the date column are actually string values from row data, not date objects. I'm going to show how to solve this a bit later in the video. All of these filters are highly customizable. Let me show you how to do that by using filter params. Columns with filters now have a filter params object. Currently, the object is empty. I will start with debounce milliseconds set to 0 on the athlete column and 3 seconds on the age column. When I enter something in the athlete filter, the action will happen straight away. On the age column, I've set it to 3 seconds. So it should take 3 seconds after when I type 19. So whack fall the daddy-o, there's whiskey in the jar. And the filter is active. It's unlikely that you would want to have different debounce for different columns. So what we'll do instead is take the debounce milliseconds out of each individual column and set it in the default call-def instead. Debounce is now specified here at the default call-def, which means this filter params will be applied across all the columns. So if I go back to the athlete column, it should still have 0 debounce. That's right. And if I go to age column, it should be the same. Yeah. Another very useful filters property is buttons property. The buttons property takes an array of strings. I will provide apply and clear. And because we added buttons in the default call-def, they will get applied to all the filters. Let's open one of them and see the buttons apply and clear. When the apply button is present, the filter will not be applied automatically. For example, if I type in here Tony, the filter will not be applied until I click the apply button. The clear button will clear the filter UI, and then I need to click apply again to apply the clear filter. Typically, you only have 1 to 3, but in total, there are 4 buttons that you can display. The others are cancel and reset. Why don't we open a filter to appreciate the fruits of our labor? There are now 4 buttons appearing: apply, clear as before, and cancel and reset. Please note, buttons appear in the same order that we provided them in the properties. Let me filter by Michael and hit apply, and as before, the rows are filtered by Michael. If I hit clear, the UI will clear. The filter will not be cleared. If I hit cancel, it will cancel my edits, meaning it will put it back to the previous state. And then if I reset, it will both clear the UI and clear the filter. So you might think right now, clear, cancel, reset, that was a bit confusing. Well, they are quite similar, but let me go through it one more time. Clear clears the UI. Cancel will set the UI back to its previous state of the active filter or clear it if there's no active filter. And reset will clear the UI and clear the active filter. Next, I will comment out the buttons and tell you about another filter property. Remember, I told you that the date filter wouldn't work because our values in here are strings and not date objects. Well, we can fix that by providing a comparator to the date filter. So I've provided a comparator here inside the filter params for the date column. And if I go to the date column now and put in a date, I can see that the filter is working. To explain this comparator is a bit too detailed for this video, but in a nutshell, here's the date from the filter. Here's the date from our data. We convert our string date into a date object, and then we compare the two date objects here. Let's step back a bit and look at how to get the state of a filter and set the state of a filter. And that's done by using filter models. First, I will remove the comparator and make two buttons with click events and handlers to save and apply the filter state. And we're done. You can see our buttons with click events and handlers. On button save, on button apply. On button save uses Grid API to get filter model, saves it in a global variable saved filter model, and console log it. On button apply, we use Grid API to set the saved filter model into the grid and console log it. I will open the dev console and bring up a filter. Let's put in Tony or Mike and click the save button. At this point, the filter state is now saved in saved filter model, and we can check the content by looking at what was printed to the console. It's an object with key value pairs. The key is the ID of the column, and then the value is the filter model for that column. You don't need to understand the makeup of this complex object. You just need to understand that this is an object that you can convert to JSON, maybe then store, and then you can bring it back at a later point and reapply to the grid. So let's reapply the saved filter state. Before doing so, I will clear the filter. Note that the column is not filtered. Then I will click on apply and the filter has been applied back. Okay, that was just one column. Let me apply a filter on two columns simultaneously. So I'll put equals 34 on the age column. And then when I hit save, I can see that the filter model now contains two columns, age and athlete. So in other words, when you save the filter model, it will save the filters for all columns. And when you apply the filter model, it will apply the filters to all columns. I'm going to refresh our app to clear these two filters and click save with no filters applied. In the console, we can see an empty object was saved. If I then apply a filter, and then apply my saved filter model, the filter is cleared. So in your app, if you want to clear all the filters, apply an empty model. Okay, on to the next item. I'm going to close the dev console and return to column devs. We'll now move on to floating filters. I will add one to the athlete column by setting floating filter equal to true. On the right hand side, you can see a floating filter at the top of the athlete column. Anything I type in here will be applied as a filter. This is kept in sync with the main filter, so any changes you make in the floating filter will appear in the main filter as well. Likewise, any changes you make in the main filter will be reflected back on the floating filter. I will now apply the floating filter to all the columns by putting the property under the default call def. Please note, the floating filter appears only on the athlete, age, and date columns because there are 3 columns with filter. So far, we had a look at the text, number, and date filters. These are the 3 filters that come out of the box with AG Grid Community. Each of those filters is far more capable than what we've gone through in this video, but I will leave these details for a later video where we can look at each of those filters individually. Now we're going to move on and look at the filters that come with AG Grid Enterprise. First step is to enable AG Grid Enterprise in our application. We do this by adding AG Grid Enterprise as a dependency. I can verify Enterprise is now active by looking at the dev console, and we can see the warning message saying that we don't have a license. But that's fine, we're just trialing. You don't need a license to trial. AG Grid Enterprise comes with 2 additional filters. They are called the set filter and the multi-filter. I will code those up real quick. So the set filter is configured on the year column and multi-filter is configured on the country column. Let's first go to the year filter and open it up. Here we can see the set filter. This is meant to look a bit like the filter you would see in Excel. The values to be selected from are taken from the data, and you can select them individually, select all, or deselect all. Or you can do a search on the top and hit enter to apply. Then moving on to the country column, we can see the multi-filter. The multi-filter is arguably the most powerful of all the filters, as it combines two filters into one. By default, it will combine the text filter and the set filter. Here you can see the separator line separating the two filter types. On the top is the text filter. You can see in the drop down all of the options you would have in the text filter. Let's stick with contains and put in land. You can see in the background the rows have been filtered with all the countries having the word land inside of them. But it's not just the rows that got filtered. If you look at the set filter underneath the text filter, you'll notice that the values presented are also filtered by land. So now it's possible to fine-tune the selection by using the set filter. So again, a multi-filter allows you to combine two filters together. As a default, those are text filter with a set filter. And combining filters together can give a very rich and powerful search experience to your users. You can also notice multi-filter working with the floating filter in the background here. Set filter is the same. It will also work with the floating filter. And as you might expect, the models can also be saved and reapplied for the set and multi-filters. When I click on save, you can see the model for the set and the multi-filters. Okay, we're almost at the end. There's just one gotcha I wanted to tell you about before we finish up. And that is what happens when the grid is not that high. Let me show you. The grid is now 300 pixels high, which is enough for a few rows, and it looks good until I open a filter. See here that not all the filter has been displayed. It's been clipped because the pop-up is using the grid as its root component. To fix that, we configure a pop-up parent. Here I have configured pop-up parent to be document body, and magic. The filter is no longer being clipped. I picked document body because it makes sense, but you can pick any element that's in the DOM to be used as the pop-up parent. And that's it. We've gone through the overview of column filters with AG Grid. We saw how to configure filters. We looked at the 5 filters provided out of the box by AG Grid. We looked at the filter models, and we looked at the floating filters. For each of those 5 filters we've gone through, I will have to do another video, since each of those beauties is far more powerful than what I was able to show you in this video. And it's also worth noting that I only showed you the provided filters that come with the grid. It's also possible to create your own filter components, and that's quite exciting. But again, for another video.